All right. Well, sometimes the disaster is not dinner. Sometimes the disaster is the refrigerator. It turns out that one can almost be arrested because of the refrigerator. Some years ago, back in the years of my early professional life in New York, I had just moved into an apartment on a nice midtown street in Manhattan. This apartment was at the back of a small former townhouse, and I had what was euphemistically called the garden apartment. Back in those days, working people could actually afford to live in mid-Manhattan. When I moved into that building, I actually knew someone who lived in the building. A guy named Steve, who lived upstairs in a studio apartment on the front of the building. I had met Steve in the laundromat around the corner a few months before. I was already living in the neighborhood. Steve and I had had a date or two, but there was really no romance developing here. He was definitely not the reason I moved into the building. I had lived there just a short time when Steve had to be out of town for a bit, and he asked if I would mind taking in his mail and watering his plants. Well, that seemed simple enough, and he left me a set of keys. A few days went by, and then one morning when I didn't have to be to work until later in the day, I decided maybe I should go upstairs and check on those plants. Well, I had a little trouble getting in. Most apartments in New York had a second lock on the door, and this police lock, as it was called, had a long iron bar that fit into the floor and then was braced against the door. Took a little fumbling, but finally I got in. This apartment was actually one room. I'd been in it a few times. The plants were over in the windows, and back on the opposite wall, there was a little kitchen unit on the wall. Uh-oh. I had just started to fill a container with water for the plants when I glanced down and noticed a little pool of water on the floor. Ugh, where did that come from? I gingerly opened the refrigerator door, which was under a counter, and more water poured out. A lot more water. I soon discovered that Steve had unplugged the refrigerator before he went away. Wasn't much food in there, but there must have been a whole lot of ice. As I contemplated the mess, the phone rang. Should I answer it? I thought, I'm not even supposed to be in here. That might be kind of embarrassing. So I just ignored the phone while I started to clean up the flood. Oh, it's a good thing I didn't have to be to work in any big rush. Well, it didn't take too long to clean it up, and finally I got back to the original business of watering the plant. As I got over to the window, I looked down And I was surprised to see 2 police cars pulling up outside. And several police officers got out. Ah, whoa! They were coming into our building. Oh, I better get downstairs. Something's going on here. I better find out if everything's okay in my own apartment. Before I could get across the room, there was a banging on the door. Oh my gosh, I thought, they're coming here. I scooted across the room. Who is it? I asked. A loud voice said, "It's the police!" Pried the door open, and I was looking into a broad expanse of navy blue chest. The 4 police officers looked like a mob in our tiny little hallway. I was terrified. I'm a neighbor, I said. I'm here to water the plants. Well, the police officers just fell back laughing at the sight of this bumbling woman in a sweatshirt and flip-flop. They were still grinning as they waved goodbye and took off. As they went down the stairs, a very embarrassed man came out of the next apartment and began to apologize profusely. "I knew Steve was away," he said. And when I heard somebody fumbling at the door, I got really worried. I knew somebody was in there, and I telephoned, but nobody answered, and so I called the police. Well, I explained my side and told him he didn't need to be embarrassed. He had done the right thing. Well, when I got to work later that day, people thought it was pretty funny that the police had come to apprehend me. Steve didn't think it was so funny when he got back, probably because I was still pretty annoyed with him about the refrigerator. To this day, I am pretty cautious around other people's refrigerators.